Okay, so I have some notes for you all in your lab report here. First of all, thanks for showing up to the first lab of the year. Very cool. The big concept that we talked about was the 5 areas that make for good shooting, which is the GSAP-T, right? The grip, stance, sight alignment, sight picture, and the trigger. If we can master those or get really close to mastery of those, we're going to be very good shooters. It doesn't mean everything's always going to go right, because we may make little tiny mistakes on one of those. Our sight picture might be off or our trigger press might be off, but we'll probably end up doing okay. So I do have notes for all of you. Nick asked a great question about trigger finger placement on his firearm. So just make sure this is clear. And what I was trying to explain was, a lot of times folks will go right to the very middle of the first pad of their finger and pull the trigger like that. But you can see that this creates this little hole here, this little gap. What we really want is we want it to be as flush, not like pressed in, but we want it to be resting against the actual frame of the gun. That's ideal. If you have a really tiny gun, like this is one of my, this is my Glock 48. This is very similar to what Bob carries, same model. I have bigger hands than Bob, so when I place my finger over here, I'm actually past my first knuckle. So when I shoot this gun, I actually back off, and there is still a little tiny gap there, just because it is more uncomfortable to shoot, well past that first knuckle right here. So I go to that first knuckle and I kind of pull the trigger with this area right here. On some of my larger guns, like I have a Beretta, those grips are very thick, and I just use the pad of my thumb. All this is flat against the gun, so that's great. One of the things, Nick, you should work on is just sort of finding that particular spot and making those nice trigger pulls and just getting used to pulling the trigger from there. There's a few of you, let's see here. Well, Pat had a lot of good things going. First, Pat, your sort of task is just sort of general manipulation of the gun, trying to eject the magazine, and then pulling the slide, locking it back, sending it forward, inserting the magazine properly. Just doing these sort of things. If you do it once, great, but you need to do this, this is the road to 10,000 reps. When I first started shooting, I was not great at this, but you have to find a way to just push up ever so slightly on your slide lock lever with your thumb. It's not a hard push. This is a very tiny spring, but you need to know how to just push up ever so slightly with your thumb as you're racking that gun back, so it catches onto the little notch that's inside the slide there, and then you can lock it back. That being said, Pat needs a little work on grip, but you made some really nice corrections. I didn't actually tell you what to do. I remember just saying, fix that grip, and you went from, gripping the pistol kind of like this or like this, and you figured it out, and that was great. So that was really, really good. Similarly with your stance, you were kind of pushing really far away. You made a nice correction where you got a little bit more forward, a little bit more athletic. So that was great. So good on you. Gloria, good confidence. We certainly like that. Gloria, and I think I also mentioned this to Brian with a Y. When you're doing some kind of manipulation of the gun that's not shooting, you're unloading it, you're locking it back, whatever you're doing, try to bring it into what we call your workspace, right? Which is kind of in here. Okay, so a lot of times I saw boom, 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 and I asked you a question, and you guys kept your arms out here, and you were, unloading the gun and trying to lock it back and putting it down, and life was good. Instead of doing that, it gets a lot easier if instead you bring it into your workspace. You just turn the gun over, always making sure you know where that muzzle is pointing, and then you lock it back. You get a lot more leverage that way. I like to use the phrase, it's like opening or shucking clams. You don't shuck a clam out here. You kind of bring it in here to get a little leverage over it. A lot of folks haven't spent their childhood shucking clams. So also opening a jar of pickles. If you need to open a jar of pickles, are you going to do it from here, or are you going to hold the jar way out here? You're probably going to bring it in. That's all because you're going to get a little more leverage on the firearm. All right. So Brian with Y, Gloria, Susan, a little bit of that. You're sort of you're doing a lot of good things. I think your trigger manipulation is going to be paramount. You and who else? Oh, and Mike was doing a lot of good things during the class, and I think a lot of it is that trigger manipulation. So in your dry fire exercises, I want you to pull up, and I want you to get a really good picture of that front sight, and as you pull the trigger, how much did that front sight move? If it moves like this, then that's not great. If it just moves like this, and it's just sort of the gun shaking because stuff is happening here, that's okay. But just kind of getting used to coming up and watching what happens to that front sight is going to be super good. All right, so that is Nick, Pat, Gloria, Michael, Susan, Eric. Eric and I have talked about this before. He has some aftermarket triggers, and unlike my trigger here, which I use pretty much stock guns, unlike my trigger where you can see there's that take up, and now I'm at the wall, and now I need to increase effort on that trigger to pull it straight back. Eric's guns, because he has some aftermarket triggers that make them nice to shoot, he only has about that much take up, and it's at the wall already. So what I want Eric to concentrate on is, as he's drawing from the holster, because I know he does a lot of dry fire drawing, as he draws, start to prep the trigger before you even get the gun in front of your face. Start to prep the trigger right about here, and then as you're shooting with a dot, as that dot comes into view, as soon as it crosses the plane of the target, pull the trigger straight back. As soon as it crosses the trigger of the plane here, it's right on target there. It's right on target there. It's right on target there. Once you get kind of used to doing that, those first shots will be a little bit easier to hit. You'll just be quicker. You're a very accurate shooter. You're a very capable shooter. You are someone that we have to kind of just find the rough edges and smooth them out. Let's see here. Scott did very well. Actually, Scott did surprisingly well. You seem to have this thing where if you take off some time from shooting, you get a little better. And then I think maybe you get bored with it or something. I don't know. But you were shooting not super fast, but you fast enough. I think I would almost like to see you slow it down and challenge yourself to get hyper accurate. You are great at being accurate enough under speed. You're really good at that. But then the moment you have that thing, like if you're going from, this target to this target, you seem to take a little more time and something happens. And I'm not sure what it is, but I suspect you're so used to pulling the trigger, wall, straight back, wall, straight back, get to the wall, straight back, get to the wall, straight back. I think you're so accustomed to that, then when you have a moment, you say, oh, okay, I have to start over, and you're not doing the wall straight back. You're just kind of smashing at it because maybe you figure, because you're a musician, you need to kind of follow that cadence. So from there, I would say really break it down, take an extra long time to get some of your hyper accurate shots, go kind of down the rabbit hole and try to get those shots all the way out at 50 feet. You know, those larger size bullseyes. Use some of those larger size bullseyes and try to get all 10 rounds inside that bullseye. Might be a little tough, but you're certainly, with a month or two of practice, that's completely achievable. And if you make a miss, the hardest thing I think to do is probably getting over it, because you see that you like, oh, I missed. Oh, I still have 4 more shots to take and I've already missed. Oh no, get over it. Everybody misses. Everybody misses. Bob missed a shot from 50 feet last night. Bob's a great shooter. No one thinks Bob is not a great shooter. You know what also makes him great is, sometimes strange things happen and you pull a shot or something happens, who knows? Get over it, concentrate again, okay. If it becomes chronic and you're missing everything, then we have to take a step back and see what the problem might be. But from there, I would love to see you kind of slow it down and really kind of understand how to get those hyper accurate shots in there. But great stuff. So all of you focus on the GSAP-T, and I'm going to test you during your next lab, whichever lab you come to. I have notes on this. On your next lab, I'm going to test you on the 4 rules of firearm safety. So be prepared to list off those 4 rules and explain them to me. All right? Thanks for showing up. Can't wait to see you again. Ciao.